You want to teach English online, but you don't want to teach kids. And let's be honest, there's a ton of information out there on teaching kids. Where to teach them, how to teach them, all that silly animated TPR that we've been taught before. You scour the internet looking for anything that will help you teach adults ESL online. I've been asked this question more times than I can count on my fingers and toes. How do I teach adults? And I'm so glad that you found this video, because today I'm going to show you some of the best ways to teach English to adults in an online environment. And these are really important techniques to know and master, because not only will you be giving them the best possible experience while they're learning English, but you'll have students stay with you for a lot longer and even start bringing their friends, which can help you grow your business and your income as an online teacher. By the way, if you're looking for an online teaching platform that caters to adults, has lessons already planned and prepped for you, and doesn't have extensive requirements to join their team, there's a company called TESOL that offers just this. All of their lessons are conversation-based lessons with all of the lesson material ready for you, and all of their students are adult students who are looking to improve their English. If you are not from one of the 6 countries that most companies hire from, you're looking for a company that teaches only adults, or you're a new online teacher looking to gain experience, this company just might be what you're looking for. They hire native and non-native speakers, and they don't require their teachers to have a degree or even a TESOL certification, although having one will definitely help your application. Thank you, TESOL, for sponsoring this video. If you'd like to apply and try them out, you can follow the link in the description box. So how do you teach adults as an online teacher? One of the first things you should consider when you're working with adults is, why are they learning English in the first place? If you've watched some of my other videos, you've probably already heard me talk about the importance of building your teacher-student relationship. Part of this boils down to learning and understanding their goals and the purpose of why are they learning English. They're not learning it just so that they can speak English. They have a higher purpose. Why do they want to speak English? Is it to get another job, advance in their company, talk to their English-speaking friends? Do they want to travel? And let's take it a step further. What part of learning do they want to improve the most? Obviously, your lessons will help them with everything, right? But what is their primary goal? Do they want to pronounce things better? To sound like a native speaker? Do they want to improve their vocabulary or reduce their accent? The more you understand why a student is learning, the more that you can help them when you're teaching them. You can tailor the lesson content to them and make sure that the corrections that you're giving are really aligned with what they want the most help from. I mean, if you're teaching someone how to eliminate their accent, and they really just want to be understood better because they have a habit of mispronouncing things, you're not really helping them reach their goal. The more you learn about their interests, the more that you can personalize the lesson and have it relate to their life and things that they care about. A lot of lessons for kids are based on fictional characters. For kids, right? This helps them relate to the lesson content. But if you start singing silly songs and showing cartoons to a 40-year-old man, he's probably not going to be impressed. This brings me to the next way to teach adults. Relate your content to real life stuff. You can include things like their hobbies, their interests, things that they might do every day, like going to work, special occasions, or even current events. Just be careful with current events though. It's always a good idea to tread carefully with anything that is or could be politically charged. If someone is learning English for business reasons, you can include things like business meetings, email communications, managing employees, or coworker experiences. I'll give you an example. So I taught a student on TESOL. He'd worked in IT before, and we started a topic related to AI. He was excited to talk about the current AI trends, what he loved, what he hated, how to use it, some insider information on how it all works, where he sees it going. That lesson went by so fast, and he got so much out of it because he was able to take what we learned and relate it to the things that he knows outside of our English lesson. Another trick is to use debate. It's typical human nature to want to express your opinion on things, especially if you're very passionate about something. And if you can get your students to speak up on their opinions, you're about to start a very engaging conversation. This is actually helpful in a couple of ways. So first of all, you're teaching them to formulate their thoughts and their beliefs into the language that they're learning. This is going to encourage them to expand their language by using words that they already know in patterns that they're not used to. It will also provide ample opportunities to be able to teach them new language expressions, Teach them how to express their opinions and thoughts and think critically. This is something that book work does not do with your students. Have you ever used debate in your lessons? Let me know in the comments if you tried this and what you debated about. This brings me on to the next topic, which is super important. You want your students to be doing the majority of the talking. A good rule of thumb is for the student to be talking 70 to 80% of the time. If you, as the teacher, are doing most of the talking, it's not really benefiting the student. They came to you to learn and to practice. If they wanted to hear you talk and not actually use it, they could have gone to YouTube. Your lesson should offer something that a free video on YouTube can't give them, and that's real life experience using the language. Plus, the more they say, the more feedback you can give to help them improve. If you spend the whole time talking, you don't really have much time to assess them. To get your students to talk more, one trick is to avoid yes and no questions. Ask open-ended questions instead. If you ask your student, do you like your job? You're not going to get much of a response compared to if you said, what do you like about your job? And instead of just bouncing to the next question, keep that conversation going. Ask them more. Get them some follow-up questions in there. Well, I like my job, but I don't like the hours that I work. Okay, if you could choose, what hours would you be working? And maybe they say, I like my job, but I don't like working from home. It gets lonely. You can say, what kinds of social activities do you do after work? Or watch this. Take those last couple of words in that sentence, it gets lonely, and turn it into a question. The conversation could go like this. I like my job, but I don't like working from home. It gets lonely. Oh, it gets lonely? Yeah, I miss being in an office. When was the last time you worked in an office? See how that changes the conversation? By the way, these are all real life examples that I've had and I've used to get my students to talk more. I'm pulling these questions directly out of real classes that I've taught. When they're speaking, take time to really listen to them. Jot down corrections while they're talking so you can bring them up after they're done without disrupting the flow of conversation. Another good thing to include in your lessons is something that's outside of the lesson plan. Now, I'm not saying to completely deviate, but hear me out here. Say you're working on a lesson that's related to sports. They've got the vocabulary in front of them, they know what you're talking about, and you get to soccer, football, I'm from America, and you randomly throw in that little tidbit about American football branching out into other countries. That's happening, by the way. Maybe this is something that's interesting to them. Maybe it's a conversation piece. They didn't know about it. Maybe they have an opinion on it. But one thing's for sure, they didn't see it coming. They couldn't skip ahead in the lesson and prepare for this. Now they've got to think on their feet. They've got to use conversational English that they didn't get a chance to prepare for. I used this exact conversation deviation in a recent lesson, and we were able to talk about how he watched the football game and what he thought about it coming to his country. It's a pretty interesting conversation too. Role-playing is another popular tool that ESL teachers can use. If you can simulate the real life scenarios that they might be using, you can help them out when they actually have to use English in that scenario. So you can practice a meeting, write up an email together, pretend they're a customer at the restaurant and you're the waitress. If you don't want to do strictly role play, you can also use general or specific situations and discuss how you deal with them. Just have a conversation about the situation in general and get them talking about it. Maybe they're going on a trip to London and they're nervous about getting lost and having to ask for help. You can ask them, what would you do to ask for directions? How would you approach someone? You could talk about some phrases that they might want to learn so they can actually follow the directions. So we talked about making sure that you're paying attention to what they're saying, really listening to them, but what's the best way to make corrections in an ESL lesson? You can write corrections in the chat. You can bring it up when it feels natural to do so. But another way to do it is what they call the echo technique. So the other day I had a lesson with an adult student, and we were talking about finding a restaurant. I asked her how she finds new restaurants, and she says, I get recommendations for friends. I echoed it, but corrected what you said. Oh, you get recommendations from friends. And then I wrote the correction in the chat for her. If your student isn't taking notes on the corrections, it's really helpful to write it down for them so they can go back to it and review it later. Plus, everyone has different learning styles. When you combine different learning styles in your teaching method, you're able to really solidify that new information. So there are different kinds of learners. Some learn best through visual, and so when you write something down, send them a chat, give them something to look at, it reinforces this knowledge. Auditory learners learn best through hearing something. If you take the time to repeat a correction to them instead of just putting it in the chat, it's going to help those auditory learners. Kinesthetic learners are more of a hands-on learner. So these learners are going to benefit from using the corrections themselves, get them to repeat it, use it in their own unique scenario, or get them to write the corrections down. And if you really want to nail all these learning styles and give them the best possible connection and retention, you can do all three. Type it out in the chat. When they're done speaking, you repeat the correction, and then you get them to use it correctly or pronounce it correctly. Obviously, you aren't going to be able to do all three for every connection. Please don't do that. But it's a good method to use occasionally through your lesson. And don't forget feedback. So you can give feedback in a couple of ways. One is through written feedback. This could be as simple as sending them a note through email or messenger, or using a feedback tool. But you should always give feedback at the end of the lesson. It encourages them to keep learning, and it gives them suggestions for improvement. It's also a good time to review what they learned, which can help them remember the things that you taught during your time with them. Now that you know some of the best ways to teach adult students, it's time to go out and get them. Get your own students so you can practice and master these techniques. If you've been struggling finding adult students, there are companies out there that specialize in teaching conversation to adults. In this next video, I will tell you more about Twenix, how to apply, what it looks like working for them. Click this video and I will see you over there.